Hey everybody, so what I want to go ahead and do now is the section called Evaluating Commas with SWABIS Part 1. You're going to notice that this section might be a little bit more tricky than when we were evaluating commas with fanboys. So please make sure you're paying attention to the lesson. I'm going to go ahead and hit begin, and I'm going to do the practice, and I'm going to walk you through the lesson with me. In this section, you're going to notice you're not going to be responsible for selecting the subordinating conjunction. They're going to highlight it for you, or they're going to bold it for you, And they're also going to highlight the comma. They're going to ask you, does the highlighted comma belong? I'm going to go ahead and teach you about these subordinating conjunctions and what they do. And then we're going to determine where the commas are going to go for each sentence. So you're going to notice I told you in the first section, and no red ink is going to tell you that subordinating conjunctions join complete thoughts. They bring them together in some way, whether that means that the subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning of a sentence and they use a comma in the middle, or they put that subordinating conjunction in the middle of the sentence. That might sound really confusing right now, but just follow what I said. She finished her soccer game. This right here is a complete thought. She is our person, our who, and finished her soccer game is our action. So we have a who and an action, so you know we have a complete sentence. Moaning Myrtle promised to take everyone out for ice cream. We have Moaning Myrtle as our who, and the action is promised, and she was going to take everyone out for ice cream. So we have two complete thoughts here. When we add a subordinating conjunction at the beginning of a sentence, this no longer becomes an independent clause. It becomes a dependent clause. When you're dependent, you rely on someone else for something. So, for example, you guys are considered dependents of your parents or your adults at home because you rely on them to take care of you. You rely on them to pay for your clothes, to pay for where you live. You rely on them to take you to school or to sign you up for school, things like that. So when you depend on someone, you have something else that is already complete taking care of you. I hope that makes sense. After she finished her soccer game. If I said to you, after she finished her soccer game, you'd be like, okay, cool, Miss Rivers, what's going to happen after she finishes her soccer game? That's why this is dependent. This part of this sentence that's highlighted right here in blue depends on the rest of the sentence for the remainder of the information. So after she finished her soccer game, Moaning Myrtle promised to take everyone out for ice cream. This right here is still an independent thought. We haven't changed that at all. We changed this right here because we added in this word after. We could have very easily just said, she finished her soccer game and Moaning Myrtle promised to take everyone out for ice cream. We could say that, but we want to know that she's going to do it after she finished her soccer game. So when we see this subordinating conjunction at the beginning of the sentence, we need to look immediately to the right of it and find that independent clause. So this is technically independent right here. And after the independent clause, we will have a comma. So after, that's our SWABI, she finished her soccer game. That's our independent clause, comma, Moaning Myrtle promised to take everyone out for ice cream. So after she finished her soccer game, comma, Moaning Myrtle promised to take everyone out for ice cream. Our comma does belong here because this SWABI is at the very beginning of the sentence. And when it's at the very beginning of the sentence, we just go to the end of the first independent clause of the sentence and we put a comma there. So we are going to keep our comma. If you're really confused, please stay with me. I'm going to help you through this. Luke Ross wears boots when there is ice on the ground. Now, you're going to notice the SWABI does not come at the beginning of the sentence. When the SWABI comes in the middle of the sentence, we're not going to use a comma for the SWABI. because we don't have a dependent clause. I could say Luke Ross wears boots, and you know that Luke Ross wears boots. That's our complete sentence. There is ice on the ground. That's a complete sentence. When we add in this SWABI, we're changing the context of the sentence, but because it comes in the middle, we're not changing the sentence by much. Luke Ross wears boots when there is ice on the ground. The SWABI's in the middle. We don't need the comma because it's in the middle. So we're going to remove the comma. Courtney Cox likes running by the river because the scenery is beautiful. The SWABI comes in the middle of the sentence. We do not need the comma. Wherever Aria Montgomery goes, a crowd of reporters follows. Now remember, in the identifying SWABI section, I told you we were really only focusing on since, when, after, because, or if. Whenever and wherever are not one of those words, but they can still act as SWABIs. In fact, they are SWABIs. They are subordinating conjunctions. So just keep that in mind. Wherever Aria Montgomery goes, a crowd of reporters follows. Aria Montgomery goes. Believe it or not, that is a complete sentence. We have a who and we have a what is she doing? She's going. She goes. A crowd of reporters follows. That's a complete sentence as well. When we slap this subordinating conjunction in the very beginning of our sentence, we're changing this section right here, this first part of the sentence, and we're taking this independent clause right here, Aria Montgomery goes. We're taking this independent clause and we're making it a dependent clause. And it is going to depend on the rest of this sentence over here to give us our information. When we see that SWABI at the beginning of the sentence, we know that right after that first independent clause that follows it, when that independent clause ends, we need a comma. So wherever Aria Montgomery goes, comma, a crowd of reporters follows, we're going to keep the comma. And essentially for this section, No Red Ink isn't going to try to trick you. Oh, is this comma in the right place? Yes or no. They're just going to ask you, do we need a comma? Yes or no. If the SWABI comes at the beginning of the sentence, you need a comma. If the SWABI comes in the middle of the sentence, you do not need a comma. So if you notice the SWABI's in the middle of the sentence, I don't need it. For this question, the SWABI is at the beginning of the sentence, so I'm going to need it. And that's just a little trick to help you through this section, but please make sure you're understanding why. When we put a SWABI at the beginning of the sentence, we're changing the first independent clause. Remember, SWABIs bring independent clauses together. But if we put one in the beginning, we're adding it to an independent clause, but it makes it a dependent clause because this part of the sentence is going to rely on the rest of it for information. So when we have a SWABI at the beginning, we need the comma. And when we have it in the middle, we don't need the comma. So not in the middle, we don't need the comma. Or it was in the middle, we don't need the comma. Over here, beginning, we're going to keep the comma. Beginning, we're going to keep the comma. So if it comes in the middle, you don't need the comma.